You are now listening to Can't Feel the Heat, the Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival unofficial podcast, the #1 Coachella podcast on the internet. Our mission is to explore the complexities of Coachella, covering the news, music, artists, technology, culture, and business of the greatest music festival in the world. Can't Feel the Heat is hosted by Tom Nash at Podcast Center LA in Torrance, California. On this episode of Can't Feel the Heat, we have Rico Lopez. Rico is an experienced camper at Coachella, as well as one of the all-around coolest people you'll ever meet in your life. Rico has camped at Coachella 6 times, and he's here to share his wisdom and talk about some of his greatest memories of Coachella, and maybe a disaster or two in the mix as well. Rico, the first thing I wanted to ask you, well, thanks for being on the podcast, by the way. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
So Rico, for those of us who might be thinking about going to Coachella and are considering camping, what's the first thing that you would say to that person, or what would you want them to know about the experience of camping at Coachella?
Anybody considering camping, if you're even like 50% into it, do it, because I feel like camping gives you the best experience at Coachella. There's just so much camaraderie. Everybody's there to have fun. Everybody's there to have a good time. And I feel like if you want to go in all gung-ho, just go ahead and go camp because it's a lot of fun.
Right on, right on. You talked about the camaraderie. Now, did you camp by yourself, or did you have a big group, or what do you recommend about like getting a group together for camping?
So throughout the years, it's just been a different sized groups. I think the first year I went, I did tent camping, and I was just with 2 other people. And then there was one year, I think in like 2014 or 15, where we had like 30 people. So it gets pretty crazy if you get to that number. But I would say like the year that it was 30 was probably one of the funnest, because just everybody was so stoked to be there. And we just had such a great experience, like together, and just like essentially kind of surviving the weekend together. By the end of it, there was just so much, like I said before, like camaraderie, and everybody was so excited because we had made it through to the end. So that's one thing that's really good about camping.
And you put 30 people in one tent, or how'd that work, man?
No, actually what we ended up doing was, it was a coworker of mine who had his group, and then I had my group, and each of us had like 12 or 13 people in our group. And so we just said, screw it, why don't we just all go in together? And then all of us had, I think we ended up having like 6 different sites, because each site is about 10 by 30. So we had 6 different sites. So we all just went in together and were able to get 6 sites in a row. And so we had like 2, 4, 6 cars. And then we just like opened that entire area up in the middle and had just a huge like combine or whatever, commune, whatever you call it.
I think you said something really important there, Rico, is that you have to all enter at the same time, because if you each come in individually, you're not going to get a spot next to each other. In fact, you could be really spread out. So would you say that's like a hidden nugget of information that maybe you, like, how did you do it? Did you have everyone meet up before at Costco or something like that and then all entered?
Yeah, exactly. So when we all decided we were going to group ourselves together, since I was the most experienced one at that point, I had done it 3 years in a row. I knew the kind of the process of getting in, and I decided, all right, why don't we just meet up at one of the grocery stores? We met up at like Ralph's, that's like 5 minutes away, and we got all of our gear first, and then we were like, all right, let's go. We all just did a big caravan. And we went into the staging area where they check all your cars and everything. And then we just were able to get in all together. And it was a process, because that whole staging area takes a lot of time. So sometimes you can get separated. But I was at the front of the group, front of the cars. And at one point, I told my cousin to take over the wheel, and I just was like running in between cars and telling people, get out of the way. This is my car. This car's going here, this one. So I was literally like directing.
You were directing traffic
at Coachella.
So Rico, what's the staging area like?
The staging area is actually like one of the best parts in a sense, because when you get there, everybody's excited to be there. And yeah, you have to wait in line because they have to search your car. Nobody's allowed to really get in there with any sort of like drugs or anything like that. So they have to search your car for drugs or weapons and stuff like that. But everybody gets there and starts waiting in line for that. So everybody gets out of their car and just starts, drinking and just music blaring. People are throwing frisbees around, playing soccer. Once you get there, the actual grounds themselves, it's all grass. So it's nice to just get out and just kind of like stretch your legs, because you've been in your car at that point, driving for a good 2 hours and getting all your stuff ready. So, but yeah, that staging area, it takes a little bit of time to get through that. But once you kind of start realizing that you're at Coachella, everybody's just in like such a good mood to be there.
Yeah, and so when you're in the staging area, man, that's really an opportunity to kind of get separated. So you got to make sure everybody's staying together and get in. It's kind of surprising to me, as big as Coachella is, and as long as it's been going on, that they don't have some assigned campsites or something like that.
Yeah, no, there's no assigned campsites. It's pretty much first come, first serve. That's why you kind of have to, depending on how big of a group you have, one of the things I recommend is always have a point person. Always designate that person that's going to make sure they're making decisions and that they're leading the group, because you're going to get separated. It's just going to happen.
Sure.
Especially with like that first part where you're trying to get in. I was always designated the point person because as time went on, I was the one that was like the veteran, the crafty veteran that kind of knew where to go, which ways that were going to be the easiest ways to get through. I always like had a really good eye for lines. So like, all right, that line's going faster. Let's go this way. But yeah, no, it's a pretty important job to have, but I always was super stoked to do that just because I knew that I was kind of facilitating everybody's time in a way. So, but it can be a little hectic, but it's fun.
It's a big responsibility.
Yeah, man, you can't start partying in the staging area. No partying for you.
Oh, Rico can do two things at once for sure. He can party and lead the group at Coachella.
Oh, yeah, I can party and lead at the same time.
It helps your decision-making skills, right?
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're in the staging area, you mentioned it's kind of hard to, keep the group together and things like that. So how did you navigate, keeping everyone together? Is there like any techniques you have for how to keep your group together?
I would recommend the first thing that any group should do, depending on how big they are, is always assign a point person. Make sure that somebody is responsible for keeping everybody together and kind of facilitating where you guys are going to go, because it can get pretty hectic in the staging area, especially with people running around. People are like not paying attention that the line's moving, or everybody's partying at that point, but somebody should always take responsibility and like be at the front line, like telling people like, all right, we got to move, we got to go here, we got to go there. Because if that doesn't happen, then you're not going to have the best time. But that staging area is a lot of fun though, like I said, because when you get there, everybody's just so ready to party, so ready to have a good time. And you're just meeting people. Like right off the bat, you're just meeting people, which is one of the best things about camping is that, you are with your friends, but at the same time, like everybody around you is there to have a good time and to be at Coachella. So there's just so much, again, I keep coming to the word camaraderie, but you just start talking to people like, hey, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Canada. I came here from Florida. And you're like, oh, I'm from San Diego. And you're just like, it's just such a good time.
So you mentioned that it's first come, first serve. So what time do you show up? When do you get there?
Well, camping opens at 9 a.m. on Thursday, which is the day before the first day of the festival. So I always get there between 8 a.m. and sometimes I've gone there as late as like 1 p.m. on Thursday. Each time has been a different result as to where you end up in the campgrounds. Obviously, the earlier you get there, the closer to the front of the campgrounds you're going to be. And the closer to the front you're going to be in terms of the entrance. I think the closer you are, the better the party is. Because those are the people that are like dedicated. They're like, we're going to get there early as hell and we're going to get to the front and we're going to like have a good time with everybody around us. And there's been instances too where I've ended up kind of toward the middle or toward the back, and it's just as fun. But at that point, you're kind of walking a longer distance, so it kind of is a pain in the ass in a way because, like I said, you're walking a longer distance. So at night when you're coming back to your campgrounds, you're like, shit, I wish I was already at my campground. I'm like walking all this way back.
Yeah, it's a long ways to walk for sure.
It is a long way to walk because there are something like, I don't even know how many rows. There's something like 70 rows of cars but I mean, I'm not talking about just 70 rows going back. I'm talking about 70 rows and then it's just super wide too. So it's really, really long distance. You can end up walking like almost 2 miles if you're in the back.
Wow.
So it's
but is
crazy.
It quieter in the back or is it quieter?
No, it's pretty much anywhere you go, you're going to be, it's kind of like, I mean, in a way, it's kind of like luck of the draw. If you're there and you're expecting to just have peace and quiet, that's not going to happen. People around you are gonna be partying. There was one year where I got there and we were next to like a group of frat guys from USC, and they were all it was like 15, 20-year-old dudes, and they partied the whole night. And my girlfriend at the time, who's my fiance now, was so fed up with it by the end. She's like, I never want to camp again. And I convinced her to camp the next year, and we had a good time. But that was one of the years where it's like, oh man, this is too much partying. But hey, I wasn't about to tell them that they couldn't party there.
So Rico, let's talk about what to bring just a little bit. I don't think we need to do an exhaustive list, but maybe just if someone's like not a camper, like what would be like just the bare minimum that they would need, do you think? And then on the flip side of that, I'm wondering if you also have some like any special things that you would like to bring that maybe most people wouldn't think to bring.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the first thing is bring a tent, because if you're going to either be tent camping or car camping, unless you want to be sleeping in the car, you know, you're going to have a tent to keep yourself some privacy and to kind of like help you from the elements. Even though it never really rains, I think it's only rained once at Coachella. It gets really, really windy at night, and it gets kind of cold at night too. So you're going to want a tent. Number two, the best thing to have is a canopy. You have to bring a canopy. Like if you don't bring a canopy, you're going to be screwed. And when I mean a canopy, I mean like one of those easy ups or just like a tarp that can cover you, because in the middle of the day, it can get up to like 110 degrees, depending on what year you go. I think one year I remember seeing a thermometer, it said like 112. So it's going to be hot. So tarp said, bring chairs, bring a folding table so that you can, you know, play beer pong, or you can have, you know, you can serve your food there. One thing that I did the first couple of years that I wish I would have, and now I do it every year, is actually bring a stove, like a camping stove.
Mm-hmm.
Cause they let you bring those in, and that way you can, you know, have your coffee, you can cook any sort of food that you want. You know, the easiest thing to make for me is like just breakfast burritos. Throw some eggs and bacon in there, bring out some tortillas, and there you go. You're good for the day. And then like with lots of ice, and bring some dry ice too for any sort of like goods that you're going to have all weekend. And then the most important thing for me was bring a lot of alcohol, a lot of beer, and a lot of alcohol. Like, because they don't care how much you bring in. I remember one year we seriously had 10 coolers just full of beer, and you can bring in actual alcohol. You just can't have it in any glass. There's no glass allowed at Coachella. So do not try to bring any glass, because, I mean, first of all, you don't want to like break it and have glass beer everywhere, because it's probably going to happen, especially if you're partying. And two, they're not going to allow it. If they catch you with it, they're going to throw it away. So,
right.
But
a lot of people walking around barefoot, right? I think some people probably go into the festival barefoot.
Yeah, that's a smart thing, man. The glass is no good, especially with fights and stuff too. I don't know if any of that ever breaks out. I'm sure with alcohol that kind of stuff happens. But
have you ever seen a fight in the camping area, Rico?
You know what? I have literally never seen a fight at Coachella.
That's good.
Ever. I've never seen a fight.
I don't think I have either.
That's one thing that I've always been so happy about, that I've never seen a fight at Coachella. I see people get, you know, aggravated. I mean, people step on each other's feet, or if you're at a certain concert or a certain show, you know, it can get pretty like crazy in there. And some people are like, you know, get off my back, whatever. But for the most part, like, I've never seen an actual fist fight or any sort of like real crazy pushing.
Yeah,
that's good. That's good.
So between my years and your 6 years, it's 15 years that together we've never seen a fight. So I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
People are going to want to know that.
Definitely.
What about the weather, Rico? So I know...
I want to go back to the cars for a minute, man.
Okay, yeah.
So,
go back to
so you pull up in your car, you got all this stuff, and you set up camp, and you got a couple rows, and you got your little group. You kind of do a circle there, or how does that work, man?
Yeah, so the way that the camping setup is essentially there is a main street going down the whole middle of the campground, and then there are streets that are, I guess, in a way, I guess you'd say like perpendicular to them, right?
Sure.
And so there are just lines of cars, and each one of those streets has a car in the front and a car in the back. And what you're allowed to do, especially if you have groups, is just line up 2 cars in a row, and then on the next side, another 2 cars in a row, another 2 cars in a row. So essentially you have a big rectangle with 3 cars on one side, 3 cars on the other side. That's how we did it. And what you can do, especially if you have a bigger group, you can just have that entire middle area. You can kind of put your tents around the outside, and then in the middle, what we did was we kind of put up like sheets and tarps and stuff to kind of have different rooms, and then we just have one big common area in the middle.
Nice.
And that's where everybody just convened in the morning. We all convened there, had a big line of food, had, you know, all our coolers there underneath the canopies, and we just had such a good time right there.
Man, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, that's how you want it. But even if you're by yourself, one thing, if you're by yourself or with like a smaller group, you know, just go there expecting to meet people. Like, don't be afraid to just, when you get there, set up your campground, and then just start meeting your neighbors. I mean, you're going to be with them all weekend. Why not just meet them and be cool with them? And then you end up having a compound anyway. So there's different ways to do it, but that's kind of how we did it.
That's cool. And then are you using the car as a staging area for food and cooking and all the goodies that you bring along?
Yeah, I mean, the car itself is pretty important. One thing, are you saying like what function does the car have? Is that wrapping?
Right. Yeah, because I have a pickup truck, so man, I'm thinking I would be on the back of the tailgate cooking. And,
Yeah, man, your truck would crush it at Coachella.
yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
Not a lot of people have
definitely.
trucks. I think there's not a lot of overlap between people who like Coachella and people with trucks.
Yeah, but I
Rico, you have a truck, right, Rico?
I brought a truck for like 3 years. It was my sister's old truck, but having a truck is really handy because
For sure.
fit a lot of stuff. You can fit a lot of stuff in a truck.
yeah, like 35 coolers of beer.
Yeah, exactly. No, I swear. We had in my tailgate or whatever, we had like 10 coolers of beer. It was great, and then we just stacked everything on top of that. So
Right.
It was great.
Well, and I'm sure you make a lot of friends like that because a lot of people are probably running out of alcohol.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
That's one big thing. That's one of the things I was going to mention when you have a lot of beer is that you attract a lot of cool people. People just want to come and party in your place. And you know, you're obviously not going to drink all that beer, but one cool thing, especially I saw my first year at Coachella, was there was just this like group of guys. Every time I walk by their campground, they would always just have beers, and they would just be like throwing beers at people, like, "Hey, have a beer here, have a beer, we're at Coachella, have a beer, have a good time." And it was just like one huge party, and it was like, all right, I'm going to do that from now on because those guys did it, and I want to make sure to pass that tradition along to the next Coachella.
Right,
so
right.
like it's just one thing that we do now.
Fantastic,
Very
man.
cool.
Sounds like a lot of good fun. Do you have any recommended vehicles that you would say bring? You know, just rent it if you have to.
Yeah, I see people renting like huge vans, like vans that have, I guess, campers on top where you can sleep. I've seen people do that. You're not allowed to bring any sort of like RVs. I think the biggest thing that I've seen are those types of vans. But I've also seen people like rent U-Hauls, like rent U-Haul vans. And because you can fit a lot of stuff in there, you know, you can fit more comfortable like mattresses and stuff like that for yourself to bring. Some people just set up huge, like actual huge tents, like you would expect at like a catering event, like those big plastic white ones. I've seen those there. But, you know, that comes with a lot of equipment, and you're not necessarily allowed to bring in any sort of metal. Like you can't bring any metal stakes. You're not allowed to bring any metal poles. But if you're sneaky enough and you can kind of hide in the right spot, you can get it in there. It's not a big deal. One way that we've been able to sneak a lot of stuff in is just kind of hide it where it's all of your bedding. If you kind of wrap it up in your bedding and just kind of tuck it away really well, you're going to get it in really easily. So
I can see right now the Coachella security are making notes. Like, we got to check the bedding next time around.
Well, I mean, if you're listening to this, it happens, but I don't think a lot of security will listen to this. I hope that a lot of people that are wanting to go to Coachella and camp will listen to this.
Yeah, man.
Did you ever take advantage of like leaving and going to buy things? Because I know you can leave, right?
Actually,
once you're there.
Yeah, you're allowed to leave. They have a shuttle in the morning that I think it takes off like starting at like 7 or 8 a.m. in the morning. You can take it to the grocery store. But I actually never did that. I think one person did it once when we had our huge 30-person compound. I think one person went because we were running out of a lot of stuff because we were like, oh crap, there are a lot of people here. I think we didn't get enough stuff. But I've actually never gone myself. But I hear that it's, you know, it's really convenient. It takes you right to the grocery store and it brings you right back within like an hour or so.
Okay.
That's pretty cool.
That's one thing that if you end up not having enough supplies, then you have that option to get into a little shuttle that they provide.
That's really cool.
Nice.
Yeah. Tell me about the need for, you know, the daily provisions, toilet paper, you know, all those little flashlights, stuff like that. Are there things that you recommend people put in their bag to kind of cruise through the weekend?
Yeah. So if you're going to be camping, I think some of the things that you're going to want are, you're going to want lots of water to help you kind of clean yourself and also to drink, because they have showers there, but the problem with the showers is that the lines are super long, especially for the women. The women's showers are crazy long. I remember like seeing girls and I asked them how long you have been waiting for, and they've been waiting for like an hour and 45 minutes, almost 2 hours, just to take a damn shower. The guys line goes a little faster. I think one time, the only time I've ever done it, I think I waited like 45 minutes, and I was like, why am I waiting this long? I can just get some wet wipes. So what I do recommend for people, especially if you don't want to wait in line, is bring wet wipes or baby wipes, and those will help you clean yourself off, and then just kind of spray yourself with some water and maybe a little soap. And then bring toothpaste, you know, all your toiletries that you would think just in a smaller form, kind of travel form. And then when you're actually going into the festival, one of the things that I really recommend to people is bring Gold Bond or baby powder, because you're going to be walking around a lot. It's going to be super sweaty there. There's going to be times you're going to be super uncomfortable with the clothes you're wearing. So all you're going to want to do is just like get a little travel size of baby powder or Gold Bond and just kind of pat yourself down with some of that, and you're going to be fresh for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I carry that a little travel size Gold Bond when I go to amusement parks or anywhere, man. I suffer from that heat rash, and I'll tell you what, man, it can ruin your whole weekend.
yeah, exactly.
That's a good tip, man. Those little travel sizes.
Yeah.
And the Gold Bond works magic.
You're giving all sorts of knowledge bombs all over the place, Rico. You're just dropping them left and right. So this is really going to help out people who've never been to Coachella.
Yeah.
What about, we didn't even talk about all the cool stuff there is to do in the campgrounds, like the art. I remember there was a dinosaur a couple years ago. Do you remember the dinosaur?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Man, I love that thing. That was so cool. I was so excited about that big dinosaur.
That's one cool thing about camping itself too, is that you pretty much, if you're going to go camping, you signed yourself up for two festivals. You have the festival in the campground and then the actual festival itself. The festival in the campground, every year they put together this really cool area where they have a big, huge DJ tent. They have like an art studio where you can go make stuff. They have, in recent years, they've put up another place where you can play like pinball. You can do like all sorts of other activities, like an activity tent. So when you're on the campground itself, it's just like a whole other party. So I really enjoy going, especially to like the silent DJ at night. There's a silent disco. That's a lot of fun. And it's always a long line to get in, but it's so much fun when you get in, because when you get there, it's always the people that are always so like super stoked and dedicated to do that.
What is a silent disco, Rico?
The silent disco is at the DJ tent after a certain time. I think it's after like midnight or something like that, or not midnight, like midnight or 1 a.m. They have a quote unquote, I guess, curfew for sound, which most people don't even bother, doing. But in the middle, they have the silent disco where you walk in and they hand you headphones, and a DJ is playing in the front, and all the headphones are synced to that DJ so that there's no speakers blaring the music out. The only music is in the headphones, but everybody's listening to the same thing. So it's funny because you see people dancing, having a good time, but all they're doing is listening to headphones, and the person next to them is like, "Oh yeah, I'm listening to the same thing you are." So it's really funny. Like, it's a funny scene because there's actually no music playing, but everybody's dancing. Right on.
So we've talked a lot about the camping. Can you just give us a little bit of your thoughts on, actually going into the festival? Is there re-entry, once you go in to come back out? How does that work?
Yeah, so if you have an actual, your wristband gets you in and out as many times as you want. When you are walking toward the entrance, there's a line, you have to go through security. So sometimes, depending on the time of day, the line can be longer or shorter. Also, depending on what security guard you get, some security guards just don't care. They're just going to pat your bag down and whatever you get in. Other security guards are actually like pat you down and look through your whole bag and give you a hard time about like a water bottle or something. But kind of just depends on what you get. But yeah, when you get in, all you do is scan your wristband, and then you're in. And if you want to get out, there's an area on either side to get out, and you have to scan your wristband again. That's one important thing, is don't forget to scan your wristband when you're going in and out, or else it'll give you like a weird signal, and they'll have to be like, "All right, what's your name? Give me your information," and you didn't scan out, whatever. Which is dumb, but whatever. It's like how they track people going in and out, I guess, to prevent people from sneaking in. Although I've seen people sneak in, so it's not like it's like hard, but not hard. You have to know how to sneak in if you want to sneak in, but that's for another show. But when you walk in, the first thing you see most of the time is you see that big, beautiful Ferris wheel, which I love going on, and we do that every year.
Really? I didn't know you did that every year.
Yeah, it's so much fun to be up there because you're like, I love seeing the perspective from the top because you have this like great view of the mountains, and you see all the cars and all the people, and you can see all the different tents and stuff like that, and all the different stages. So I make sure to go on that at least once or twice a year. And then they also have, if you don't want to carry your stuff around, they have lockers available. So you can buy a locker and just put your stuff in the locker. And then, if you want to come back, I think I got in that one. It kind of just helps you kind of put extra stuff away. Like if you have like a sweater, like a light sweater that you might want to bring around, or any sort of like towels or blankets or stuff like that, you can kind of stuff them in there for later on in the day. And one of the first things I always do too is just go to the merch tent. Like if you want to go get a shirt or something, that's another thing that I do every year. I grab like a tank or a shirt or something, just kind of like commemorate the year. Just go grab one.
Yeah, your souvenir.
That I would say, do that right off the bat. Just do that the first thing, because
the cool ones sell out, huh?
Yeah, the lines get longer by the end and everything just starts selling out. So if you want to get something cool, like the best thing, just have a pick of whatever you want. Just go right there and just start buying it. So, yeah.
That's the pro move. So ultimately, you gave a lot of really good advice about camping, but I love your taste in music, Rico. So do you want to shift gears a little bit and just tell us about some of your favorite musical memories and moments and artists from Coachella? Does anything stand out in your 6 years of some of the best music you've seen there?
Yeah, I've seen so many different types of music. I mean, that's the thing that I love the most about Coachella. We can talk about camping, we can talk about the partying, we can talk about this and that, but seriously, the music there is like the best part. Because going in, when I went to my first year in 2011, like, I was a kid. I was a child. I didn't know anything about music. Like, I remember going there. I thought I knew about music, and then you go there, and one thing I like to say is Coachella, never expect Coachella to give you what you want. Expect it to give you what you need to hear. Like, that's what the mindset you need to go in. Because it's not super popular acts, not any like mainstream acts. It's just super just like indie acts that are gonna like open your eyes up to good music. So I think my first year, it was crazy. That year was stacked. 2011 was stacked. I think the headliners were Kings of Leon, Arcade Fire, and Kanye West. And that's insane. Like, just the headliners were crazy. And I remember going that year. I think that year, like, Skrillex played at like 1 p.m. in the middle of the day. Nobody knew who he was. Nobody knew what dubstep was. I was like, what is this? This is crazy. So that was good. I think I remember seeing that year. I saw like Two Door Cinema Club. I saw Foles that year, which was an awesome band that is like one of my favorite bands now.
Cut Copy was that year.
Yeah, Cut Copy played that year. That's always been one of my favorite bands. And so that was like a great experience because it was Cut Copy at Coachella, and it's my first Coachella. And I had seen Cut Copy before, but they killed it that set. That was such a good set. But I think that first year, and I've been going every year, but still to this day, that first year, Arcade Fire, that set was one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. And I still remember the feeling I had when I was at that set, being like, this is what life is about. Just like having a good time, listening to awesome music, surrounded by everybody that is in the same mindset as you. And then it was just such good music and such a good show. I mean, the band themselves they're just such good show. They have such good showmanship. You know, they're always running around the stage, playing different instruments, and the music itself is just such good music. And then on top of that too, that was the year where they did their installation, where they dropped all of those huge glowing balls on the crowd, and when they were playing Wake Up, and it was just such a surreal moment in my life that I'm always going to remember.
It was such a surprise when, I believe it was called the Creators Project, when they released those balls that came down, and no one knew that was going to happen. And it was, I got to think that's like the greatest moment of Coachella of all time. It'd be maybe between that and the Tupac hologram. That's one of the things about Coachella is the surprises. You just never know exactly what's going to happen. I think that's definitely one of my favorite moments of Coachella. And remember the song Sprawl 2 by Arcade Fire?
Yep.
Oh, it's such a jam.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, it turned it. I remember when they played that song, it was one big dance party. Everybody was dancing, having a good time. It was so much fun. Like, I can't believe that I actually got to see that. And that was, I remember that was the moment where I was like, I will go to Coachella every year for the rest of my life. although at this point, I don't know if that's like feasible. I don't know if I can, because I'm getting married and want to have family. So I don't know. I might have to take a couple years off at one point.
Yeah.
But I will still, like, as long as I live, I will try to go to Coachella as much as I can. Just because, I mean, it's right here. I live in San Diego. It's in my backyard. I mean, the cost isn't too crazy. You know, every year I probably end up spending maybe like, I don't know, on my tickets or my passes and my fiance's passes and everything. Probably spend like $1,000. But it's like a big, giant vacation, like spring break. So I'll do it.
Definitely.
Yeah, when you think about $1,000 for 3 days, man, that's nothing, right?
Yeah.
3 full days, man. You take the kids to Disneyland and you're in for $500 for one day.
And two, on top of that too, like if you're camping, it's only, I think at this point, when I first started, it was $85. I think it's up to $100 now. So that's one good thing about camping too, is that, you know, you don't have to spend a lot of money on your actual lodging. Like if you're going to be at a hotel or an Airbnb, you're probably going to spend way more money. So that way you're already there and you're only spending $100 to be there just for camping. So that makes it a lot more cost effective if you're going to be going.
And it's $100 per car, right?
Yeah, $100 per car per spot. But every spot is allowed to have as many people as you can fit. I mean, I think one time when I went my second year, I think our spot, we had like 4 people and the other spot had like 4 or 5 people. And we just crammed in there. 2 people were in the car, like 2 people were in each car, and then each actual campsite had like 4 people in their tent. So it was like crammed in there, but we didn't care. It's like, whatever. We're here to party. We're not here to sleep. So whatever. We're here to party. Yeah.
Hot bunking it, man. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Any other advice you want to share about Coachella or any other favorite memories before we let you go?
I'd say like I said before, just go in there expecting to have a good time and just be ready and have that mindset of that you're there to kind of let yourself go and you're there to meet people. And it's a place where you can go and kind of escape from, your day-to-day life. And that's what I love about it, is that everybody there is just in the same mindset and they're all you're just there and everybody's just so nice. Like everybody gets to be nice. Like people think that's weird. Like, oh, people go to Coachella and they're just there for the scene. Like I've never really experienced that. I think that everybody there just wants to be nice to each other and everybody there just wants to have a good time. So if you are in your 20s or even if you're in your 30s or your 40s, but especially if you're in your 20s, go to Coachella at least one time in your life because you're going to experience something that's really awesome in this world.
Thank you, Rico. All right.
No problem.
So that wraps it up for our interview with Enrique Lopez, camping expert and Coachella connoisseur.